While perhaps not as many as some of the actual PC building focused channels here on YouTube, I've made quite a few PC builds over the years for my channel, which means I have a lot of PC parts and computer cases eating up very delicate amounts of space that I am running out of. And so there was one in particular that I wasn't ready to get rid of until I was able to make a video on it. And so that's what we're doing today. This beefy boy, the beefiest of boys, is the first computer I ever built for YouTube explicitly, or at least an iteration of it. We're gonna take a look at it right after this.
The Mod Mic Wireless can boldly go where no mic has gone before. This microphone can attach to any headphones, requires no additional wires, features very low latency, a dual capsule microphone, 12-hour battery life, and LED indicators on the receiver so you know when you're muted and or when the battery is running low. And you can basically run your entire house without ever losing a signal. What more could you ask for? Learn more by clicking the link in the video description.
So this giant ridiculous case is the Nzxt Phantom or Whisper or something. I don't even 100% know that it's Nzxt anymore, but it was the silence optimized case that was recommended to me, I believe even by Linus, before the Define R series came out. So before the Define R4, or at least before that was kind of the go-to recommendation. I believe it was Nzxt, but I can literally not find a single ounce of information about this case online anymore, and haven't forever. I clearly have it sticker bombed, as I always do. It has a hinged front door here with two 120 or 140 millimeter fans. It had a front attached option for I/O and 4 different 5 1/4 inch bays, which was great because at the time I was really using optical drives. I still do, actually. It also had this little top expansion, which allowed for an eSATA port, headphone, microphone jack, and 2 more USB 2.0 ports. USB 3.0 was not even kept in mind for this case. This is how old this is. It's a dusty boy. Inside this monstrosity is some pretty old hardware, circa 2011, with some minor quality of life upgrades, and about 4 inches of dust. So before we actually power it back on, I'm gonna do a little bit of cleaning, not a ton. I'll save that for like the part 2 where I clean it up and try to see if I can make it perform any better. But inside here we have the AMD Phenom X4 edition 965 Black Edition processor. This thing ran at like 3.04 gigahertz or 3.4 gigahertz if I'm remembering right. Quad core, I believe. I will double check when I get in here. And then it's on a super cheapo, I believe, MSI replacement motherboard. You see, when I originally built this rig in about 2010, I want to say, I had it on a really nice Gigabyte board, and I had it in a HAF high airflow 932 case. Had like the big 200 millimeter fans. It was loud as a jet engine, and I just got sick of it because it was right on my desk and making my recordings basically unusable for my gameplay videos back then, and I wound up switching it. At some point before I switched cases though, the motherboard died. I don't remember what the exact problem was. I probably never even figured it out, but the motherboard stopped working, and then when I went to pull the CPU out of it, I had like a basic Cooler Master cooler on it, you know, kind of like the Hyper 212 Evo these days, but you know, whatever that would have been back then. The AMD CPUs, since they have the pins on the bottom and pull out very easily, when I went to take the cooler off, the CPU came with it. I didn't twist. I always recommend people twist off their coolers when they're using AMD, although this might counteract the point I'm trying to make, but because I've seen them get ripped out of the socket so much, you have to be gentle with it, but as long as you apply a little bit of twisting as you're trying to remove it, you can usually get it free. You don't want to twist the CPU out of the socket, however, because you could bend the pins, and what ended up happening was when I ripped the cooler out, I bent the pins. And so I had to buy an all new motherboard and processor, and so I ended up getting a cheapo MSI one. Not that MSI is a bad company, but this specific motherboard was a downgrade in basically every way. I've probably got, what do I got here? 8 gigabytes? So I've upgraded it to 32 gigabytes of DDR3 memory. This is G-Skill Sniper at 1600 megahertz speed. I actually started with Crucial Ballistics Tracer RAM, which had little red LED indicators that ran up it, which was really cool at the time. And then I since went ahead and threw on my Noctua NHD 14 that was originally in my old, I forgot what the Zarya build with the FX 9590 in it. So I've made a couple quality of life upgrades. We have a cheapo modular OCZ power supply, a 1 terabyte, I believe. Yeah, 1 terabyte WD Blue hard drive in here, and then like a 60 gig, actually, two 60 gig SSDs zip tied together in here. And so this computer lasted me a very long time. This computer was my main for YouTube gaming and editing computer from like, if we're counting the first iterations of this, from sometime in 2010 until 2014, till like midway through, actually fall 2014, when I switched to my 9590 rig. So between its iterations, oh, by the way, I've also swapped all of the fans because it has two like 80 mil fans in the bottom or 90 mil. I've swapped all of those over to Noctua fans as well, trying to keep this as whisper quiet as possible. It does have sound foam eggshell padding in it, but this is not very dense stuff. It is purely just like eggshell stuff, so it doesn't really absorb all that much. But yeah, this was my main PC for everything I did from 2010-ish up until late 2014. And then it became my wife's main computer from 2014 until 2016, when I finally switched over, when I got my Intel sponsorship and had switched over to my 6900K Zazima rig. And then for a couple years, it was my buddy's only gaming PC and streaming PC, and set in his floor and did all this. And at all this time, it was sitting in floors and on desks and gathering dust and never being cleaned. And we're finally gonna clean it. Now you will notice I didn't mention the graphics card, and that's because I cheated a little bit. I ended up having to open this before I was able to record the video because I needed to take out the graphics card as I took it to DreamHack Dallas to get it signed by everyone who I met with and who came up to say hi and things like that. It is the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 660. This is an EVGA model, but it is just the standard stock blower cooler. But this was my first card with NVENC, or NVIDIA's GPU video encoder on it. And this is kind of what accelerated my ability to make YouTube videos and tutorials, was getting this encoder and in OBS in about 2013 and really kind of running with it. And I use this card for a lot of stuff. And so when I was doing that panel on NVENC and we were talking, and one of the talking points, it was super brief, but was that the 600 series was the first generation with NVENC, I wanted to bring it to be like, yeah, that's when I got started. And so I took it out and cleaned it up and took it apart and re-thermal pasted it and got it signed. It was barely functional for anybody when my buddy finally gave this rig back when he got his own gaming rig. So I honestly don't expect it to run much, but I do want to dust this out before we put it back in there and suck all that dust back up in it before we do some testing. But I'm gonna do a little minor cleanup, and we're gonna see how this thing performs in 2019. Honestly, there isn't a ton that I can do without just getting the dust flooding this room. And honestly, turning it on is gonna shoot a bunch into this room anyway. So we're gonna get this hooked up and powered on and just run, some basic benchmarks, try to play a couple games. And then we'll do a part 2 where I actually fully give this some tech yes lovin', and because Brian's channel, and see if we improve the performance at all, because I am terrified of what's gonna happen with this. All right, let's see if this thing even powers on. We have power. I forgot how quiet this thing was. And we're booting into Windows. That was fast. That was faster than my current. Fan noise is picking up a little bit, but you probably can't even hear it in the video. But most of that is actually just older fans and not being optimized. But I heavily optimized this rig in terms of fan quietness. I've got all Noctua fans, even the little 90mm ones, except for my power supply fan. And I've even got the fan cables cable routed, and everything's cable managed nice and neat. I never did this before. And so this is pretty cool. Go ahead and set up our video settings here. All right, so we're not on the latest updates of Windows 10 by a long shot, but that's fine. We're looking at the, like I said, AMD Phenom 2 X4 965 Black Edition, 3.4 gigahertz boost clock. Obviously clock's down a little bit. 4 cores, 4 threads. Tiny amounts of cache. We've got 16 gigs of RAM. I said 32. I misread the RAM sticks. I was about to be concerned. So 16 gigs of RAM. We've got the 60 gigabyte OCZ boot SSD. We've got a Kingston 120 gig SSD, and then the 1 terabyte hard drive that I mentioned. I just got it hooked up to internet, so it's got all sorts of stuff to mess with here. We're gonna update GPU drivers and not worry too much about other updates, just because we're not going for scientific benchmarking here, and we'll go from there. Man, even just having like a single updater run in the background as I'm trying to connect to a network share, like everything is slowed. Oh boy. All right, well, we got the GPU driver updated, but whenever I went to restart, it just got stuck at preparing to update Windows for like an hour. Ain't nobody got time for that. And since the point of this isn't to be on the most newest version of Windows, I did the thing that you're never supposed to do, and I hard reset the computer. But I just want to run a couple tests here. I didn't want to do anything complicated. This was supposed to be a fun, quick side project. So we're going to run Cinebench R15 and R20, see what kind of scores we get compared to the other hardware that I have tested over the years. And we will run a couple games. And I also wanted to go ahead and see how the CPU temps are doing, because it's been running on the same thermal paste since 2014-ish, whenever I swapped this cooler in. I don't honestly know when that was. Okay, we're looking at a CPU temp of 35 to 40 degrees on idle here. That's really good. This Noctua cooler, I will say, I have loved, I posted this on Twitter and someone else commented on it. I love the brown and silver Noctua theme that kind of developed in this case, not on purpose. And Noctua's air coolers just kick a lot of ass, and this thing has been running forever and is still apparently rock solid. So we're gonna go ahead and run Cinebench. I'm gonna do a run with like a higher process priority second, but I just wanna see what the CPU temps get up to first. We're just gonna go ahead and run that. Man, that was another thing I loved about this processor. It was only 4 threads, but it ran solid at all times and always stayed pretty cool for me. I mean, this is clearly mind-bogglingly slow compared to what we run these days. Like virtually every other computer I've tested in the past couple years would have been finished by now. But for what it was at the time, this was a beastly little processor. And I couldn't afford the big fancy whatever Intel had at the time. This was my go-to, like, I can afford this and afford the hardware for it. We got a whopping score of 240 instead of... It is the 3rd lowest score that's registered in my Cinebench here, and honestly, I don't even think either of those processors are ones I've used. They're just the built-in ones. So it's lower than virtually anything else I have tested. I'm going to run it again with a higher process priority to get a better score, and then we'll switch over to R20 and see what we get, but... Just to put this in perspective, that is basically 10 times lower than the 9900K. All right then. Well, okay then. By running it as real time, we gained 100 points and knocked it up to the 4th lowest score, beating out, weirdly enough, the i7 6500U in my gaming laptop. I really don't know why that would be, but we're at a score of 347 now. On to R20. And so far, the highest that our processor has reached is 46.8 degrees. So honestly, I can like dust this a little bit, but I don't really need to give it any new thermal compound or anything. So that's pretty cool. That'll save me an extra step. I'm still planning on totally disassembling it and getting rid of this case after we're done with all of the testing, but knowing that I get to sort of cheat and skip that step is pretty cool. Because it's not even going to come close to thermal throttling, so it's not like I have to worry about that limiting my results or anything. Well, I'm being driven nuts because of how long that takes. I got a score of 530, and again, our highest temperature is 48 degrees Celsius, which is not bad. So I'm gonna update a couple games. We're just gonna test a couple older games here, and then I really need to get this moving and cleaned up because, like I said, I'm just being driven nuts by how slow it is, and none of the games are updating. Can't access game servers. Content servers unreachable. What? I have internet access. No internet. I had internet access. I don't know where my internet access went. To be fair, this computer has probably not been booted over like a year and a half. Maybe longer. Actually, it's definitely been a year and a half because it hadn't been booted prior to us moving, and we moved almost a year and a half ago, so oh boy. Alright, we're loading up some Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare multiplayer. Something I played a ton on this rig. See how it holds up today. Obviously, this game hasn't received any updates since the last time this rig was used, other than like Modern Warfare Remastered, but... Alright, we've got everything maxed out, 1080p, 120 hertz. That's the most I really want to run it right now, especially since I need to be able to record. Let's go find a server. Can I just say there's still a lot of people playing this game? Holy crap. It's because the Modern Warfare Remastered PC port was a big flop. I enjoyed it on PS4, but apparently like it got dropped immediately on PC. And so there's still a pretty good audience in the PC version of Modern Warfare, just normal. However, keep in mind some of the servers kind of fake their player count a bit. There we go, free-for-all on Creek, here we go. Apparently there's another update to this game that isn't distributed through Steam that I don't have at the moment, so we're just running with this. I don't have any classes on this PC, that's fine. This mouse is super sensitive. We are running at the full frame rate cap of 90 FPS though, so that is... Oh, spawn protection, I thought I was saying I was spectating. This might be a hardcore server, but everyone... The dude who kept killing me seemed to be hiding in a corner. Alright, we're not doing too bad. Like, it's holding the 90-91 frame rate cap. This is a really good gaming experience. For a game that I still play today, and would so happily play, like, on this hardware today. And again, this rig is mostly quieter than my current PC. Granted, it has like 1/100th of the capability as we just saw, but tried to do the little treat. Yeah, why is everyone sitting around? This isn't how we played Call of Duty 4 back in the day. We ran and ganned. We ran and ganned. Yeah, this is hardcore. They're dying from one bullet. Although there's a radar and stuff, so maybe damage is just tweaked. Holy bonkers. No! Haha! Your mind duct. Come on. Alright, so clearly games of this era ran pretty well on this hardware. Like, I don't ever remember having any major complaints about game performance at all on this machine. Even with the 660, which is obviously a pretty old card, like, graphics power was really rock solid at this point. And the 660 was an incredible value for gaming budget. This game does have a very stupid 90 FPS cap on it. So I want to throw one more game on it that might be able to actually utilize our full refresh rate here, just to see how it holds up. Obviously, this one won't be hard to run either. Alright, it takes way too long to update these games, so I'm just going to play one more here. Actually, we could play two more, because one of them doesn't need an update. But let's check out Team Fortress 2 real fast here, which needs an update after it just said it was finished updating. Impressive. Cinematic, 24 frames per second. Alright, so I'm just turning everything up to the highest possible setting, because again, this is an older DX9 game. Doesn't really, it's not going to be hard to run, but this is something, again, I would have played a crap ton of at the time I had this computer. I joined and lose immediately. Video games never change. Alright, we are running 120 to 140 FPS here on this map. 170, 180, so depending on the area, like we're running between 120 and 200 FPS just fine, no problem. Frame time is pretty good. I'm not feeling any crazy micro stutter or anything. Everything feels fine. Even when I'm like rocket jumping, like there's little hitches, but not, I mean, little bumps in the graph, but not actual hitches. I don't know where anybody else is. Running really smooth on my end. They've completely changed TF2's UI. I haven't, a lot of this I don't recognize at all. It's really bizarre. It doesn't even feel like TF2 should feel IMO. Alright. Let's go! I am playing without sound here, but that's fine. Ah! It's a speed! What the? Hello? How did he not die? It didn't even take damage? What? Hello? Alright, well, you get the idea. For the time, it ran ridiculously well. I could barely fit this Noctua cooler in here, but it kept it ridiculously cool over time. Held up as my editing rig for many years. Lots of great gaming memories on this rig, but it's super dusty and it's time to disassemble and decommission it because it's eating up too much space, and I'm really not going to use this case anymore moving forward. It's very dated. I'm going to keep on to hang on to the rest of the hardware just in case, because I may find other uses for it or return to it at some point, but I don't think we're gonna, this already took way too long, so I don't think we're really gonna do a part 2. I'm just gonna get this dusted out and get all the parts cleaned up and store it away.
I also loaded up my beefy X264 Slow is Pointless project that I kind of use as a ridiculous DaVinci Resolve benchmark, just to see how this computer would handle for my modern day video editing. Setting it to 4K, making sure everything's set up properly, just opening the project and loading in footage and just processing what's there took like 5 to 10 minutes of 100% CPU usage before the software would do anything. And then once it did get loaded up and stuff, playing it back, it clearly just wasn't doing it. Even dropping the project down to 1080p, it was still really not able to do much of anything. So rip this computer for editing purposes these days. Between the ancient and old GPU, lower tier GPU, since Resolve is very GPU reliant, and the fact that this quad core processor was clearly bottlenecking everything, there was just no hope. I also forgot to mention that whenever I turn off this computer, at least for a while, the power supply, fan, and LED keeps going, and I don't know if it needs to cool it to a certain degree or if it's trying to like burn off excess power. Because it still keeps going after I flip off the power switch. It's like it keeps going until it runs out of power, which is just a really weird quirk of this system. So I went ahead and took it outside, got it taken apart and dusted out, and I was planning on keeping most of the components. Went ahead and kept the Nzxt 14 or D15, even though I don't have any spare mounting hardware for it at this point. Noctua does have a form where you can request additional mounting hardware if you have proof of purchase and things like that, but that's specifically for AM4. I don't have, all the extra backplates or clamps for any of the Intel CPUs or anything like that, so that's unfortunate, but I kept it, cleaned off the fans, because I'll always use Noctua fans and everything, so I'll always have a need for them. But the one surprise that wound up with me throwing away some of the components in here is I found scorch marks on the SATA power connection going to the DVD drive. The back of the DVD drive is like scorched up and melted. The weird part is it was still working. It was still functional, completely functional, as far as I could tell. I even put in a disk and tested it. But there was no way I was going to trust that anymore, nor the power supply that did it, because this wasn't some weird, cheap, because I've done this before even in a video, cheap Molex to SATA adapter that exploded. This was the power supply direct peripheral SATA power connection to the drive. That's kind of concerning or scary. There was probably a big dust ball or animal fur piece or something on it, but oh boy. But that was the only real surprise, but that meant I didn't get to keep the DVD drive nor the power supply. But I do have the motherboard and processor that will be making another appearance in a future video.
And yeah, thank you so much for watching this kind of weird video, just meant to be like a nostalgia deep dive into the old computer I had here. What did your computer builds look like from 2010 to 2011? Did you cable manage at all? What kind of hardware were you rocking? Let me know in the comment section down below. I originally got the first 965 for Christmas, which started this whole original build when the previous case and stuff. And then, like I said, I ended up killing them and having to rebuy new ones anyway. But then once I realized how terrible a decision the 932 HAF 932 case was, I switched to this Nzxt one. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Hit the like button, subscribe for more tech education. Come over to our Float Plane channel, where you can get early access to videos and behind the scenes content for a monthly subscription. It's kind of like Patreon, kind of like fan funding stuff. Ran by Luke from Linus Tech Tips. Really cool platform. Go check it out. I'll see you in the next one.